20 Minute Tim's flagship episode 330. I'm your host Jamie, and I'm joined by Stephen.
What's happening?
And Melly.
Yes.
And if you like this podcast, if you like these videos, if you like what we do, patreon.com/20 Minute Tim's is the place where you can support this podcast in exchange for extra podcasts, extra videos, extra writing. We do scouting, we do all sorts of great content on there. So head on over to patreon.com/20 Minute Tim's to support the podcast and get extra content. The link is in the bio, even the bio of the podcast. So last week we had a bit of a discussion about, the transfer activity dominated the agenda. And as we sit down to record this today, we're coming off the back of 2 matches against Kilmarnock. Giakoumakis scored in the cup semi-final, raced to Instagram not some hours later and put a little inspirational / cringeworthy post up saying live every moment like it's your last, which I thought was a bit dramatic. Yes. But I think that sort of gave an indication of where he was heading and where his mind was at the time. And as just before we sit down here, hours before we sit down, it seems like Celtic have accepted an offer. Judging by the reports out there, it might be false by the time the podcast goes out.
It's a Romano effort, isn't it? Is that Fabrizio Romano has been talking about it on Twitter?
Fabrizio Romano amongst some others by the time we sat down. Celtic have accepted an offer, Martin Melly, from Urawa Red Diamonds in the J League of around €4 million. Don't know why it's been quoted in euros. It's between a Japanese side and a Scottish side, so it's about £3.5 million. Does that represent, if that were to be true, if that goes ahead, £3.5 million for Georgi Giakoumakis after 18 months when he's got 3.5 years or so left on his contract, represent good business?
I don't think it represents good business for MD, apart from maybe Giakoumakis' bank balance. I think it's disappointing from my point of view. I like Giakoumakis as a player. If we are going to sell him, we're not making that much profit on him, so I'd rather keep him. If the guy wants to go, then you have to look at that. But just don't really see how the deal benefits MD. I don't see where Giakoumakis is going with this apart from a bigger paycheck. So disappointed all round in the deal for us and for him, to be honest.
Stephen?
Well, the thing is, on that, we assume that, right? But we assume that Giakoumakis has been given an offer that's mind-blowing to go to Japan, and therefore that's the appeal. So he needs to get out here as quickly as possible. And he can't wait to go, by the way. Yeah. We've had some players who were absolutely choking to leave this club over the last few years and were absolutely pilloried for it. He seems to be skating scot-free with his reputation intact, despite being absolutely giddy to get out of this club. Edwards,
to name one. Edward. It's a weird phenomenon. You picked up on it just before the podcast we started down to record, and with Christopher Ayer and Edward and all these other players, they want to go, and it's like, bloody murder for them wanting to go. And even though they're going for big money, they're going for big money and securing the future of the club. This seems to be the first instance where we've got a player wanting to go, and everyone's like, well, if he wants to leave, just let him go.
10-year hysteria, mate. And
maybe
in the cold light of day, we're all a bit more reasonable at things. But where I was going was, we assume that Giakoumakis has been offered a significant pay rise to go to Japan, but I'd be astonished if that's the case. Don't get me wrong, there's obviously something in it for him, so he will be on a bit more. But again, as we spoke about maybe last week or the week before, it's Japan. It's not like China a few years ago, and it's not like the MLS where they have those kind of blue chip signing things where they break their salary cap for it. Don't see Japan being a huge money pit for some, or like a huge payer for a guy like Giakoumakis. As besides the point, don't really care what he's getting paid. The fact is he's looking like he's out. I'll be honest, I'm kind of done with the drama of the Giakoumakis will he, won't he transfer out saga. But the reason it has gathered, or it has caught my interest again this week, is because every time I turn around, it's less money we're getting.
Inflation.
I'll get him sold right now in case it drops any further. I feel like it's like the opposite of one of those things now where if you try and order, like not that we would, and not that they're sponsoring the podcast, but now Domino's always run like deals. So it's like, I don't know, 2 large pizzas for a tenner or whatever the deal is, and then as soon as you click through, it's like 26 quid when you get to your basket. I feel like this is the opposite of that. We've been trying to sell Giakoumakis for £7 million, and all of a sudden we've walked away with 3.5. No idea how this has happened.
There's a couple of elements to look at this, isn't there? There's like the football fan element, like whether you like Giakoumakis, because another thing that I really don't like is how cynical everyone's gotten recently. Like, oh well, if we buy him and replace him with somebody else, that's fine. Yeah, but there's a lot of assumptions there. Yes. You're just assuming we're going to go out to the market and find someone who plugs in directly, like, just unplug Giakoumakis, plug in another player, scores all the same. It doesn't really work like that. No. There's the football fan element, and I like Giakoumakis. I know he's moaning and snivelling recently. He's sort of got him my tits a wee bit. But I was trying to find a way not to say that, but I just couldn't. I just couldn't avoid it. Aye. There's my one swear from the podcast wasted on the word tits. Unbelievable. So,
said it again.
So yeah, well, they tend to come in pairs. So there's that way. There's that way to look at it. Then there's like the business side to look at it, and then there's the replacement side. So I just can't see any sense to this transfer because we're selling it for what we bought him for. So it's not like a flip. It's not like the player trading model. We seem to be getting, give or take, a couple of million what we bought him for. And then you look and you go, well, what can you get for that money in the market historically? Say we get £5 million for him or €5 million. Well, that's a Yeti money. That's no really solid go out to the market, get a striker, because the scoring rate was good for us. He chips in with goals for us. So I'm a bit worried about, there is a degree of reservation about whether or not we can replace his contribution to the team for what we're getting in. And then I'm also perplexed by the 5-year deal thing. Why sign a player on a 5-year deal if we're powerless to hold on to him after 18 months?
I think it's a strange deal all round because of this. From his point of view, I thought he'd be looking at the peak of his powers right now and saying, right, do you know what, I'm at a good level right now. I'm playing at Champions League football. I'm playing in a team that wins. To sacrifice that to go to Japan at this stage of his career, that could be there for you in 4 years' time, I'd think. But to go right now when he's playing well and he's at a decent club for his stature, I'd say, for the way he's came up in football. So I don't understand it from Celtic's point of view. Look, if he wants to go, okay, but that doesn't mean you let him go for as little as that. And I know it has to depend on teams who come in for him, who's in for him. So it's a buyer's market, but it doesn't make sense all round for me, player and club-wise, because I think Celtic were in a good position. I'd like to know more of the ins and outs of why the guy wants to leave. Celtic don't have to sell him, but if he wants to go, there's no point keeping him around. But I would like to see him go on to something better. This is just a wee bit disappointing for me. On the replacing him, yes, look, if we go out and buy a guy at, $5 million, that's a Yeti, but we bought Giakoumakis for less, we bought Kyogo for less. There was talk last week about Celtic buying Hatate, a couple of players for less than Rangers bought Matondo for. So it's about who you spend the money on rather than how much you spend on. So there will be players out there we can go and replace them with. Whether that is effective, I've said before, I think we can get a better player, whether he scores more goals, but I don't know, it's strange. I can't really get my head around it right now. Maybe in the fullness of time, maybe it'll be easier if we already had a replacement in. I'd be a lot less disappointed in it, but until that happens, I'm still going to be.
Ange said after the semi-final there that he's hoping to get one more in after the window, or before the window shuts, rather, Stephen. But people seem to be taking this "he wants to leave" thing as read, whereas I'm not too sure where that's coming from, because all the rumours prior to this was that Giakoumakis wanted more money, which again begs a question about these 5-year deals. Everyone seems to come on a 5-year deal, but after a 5-year deal, we seem to have two players who seemingly want to leave for more money. And you're like, well, why not just give them the 3-year deal? Because if really I'm not too sure why this transfer's arisen, but the thing about him wanting to leave, everything, all the rumours seem to be contrary. He seemed to want more money, he seemed to be quite happy to stay at Celtic.
Well, contracts can sometimes be slightly more convoluted and complicated than just it's 5 years for the same amount of money, so you're signed for that length of time. This is your value. We'll sell you if such and such a bid comes in. It may well be that at the time of negotiation, he and his agent said, look, we're going to renegotiate this in 18 months' time. If you want him to sign a 5-year contract just now, that's a big commitment from my player. What we'll do is we'll look at this in 18 months' time, and if you're not prepared to offer X amount, then we'll probably look to go. And that's not like the agent pulling weird fast ones or anything like that, or underhanded tactics. Everyone will have agreed to that if that happened. Again, I don't know this, but if that has happened, and it wouldn't be unusual for that to be the case. We'll have a look at this in a couple of seasons. It probably wouldn't be 18 months. That would be an odd thing to do, but it just turns out like that's the position we're in just now, where things have ramped up a little bit. It might have been that after one season, let's have a look at his contribution. We'll maybe look to increase his wages. Celtic maybe just aren't prepared to do that at this point. Maybe they've just decided, look, he was a big factor in winning the league last year, winning a double last year, but we don't really see him contributing going forward. we're going to look to get a certain type of profile of player in. Giakoumakis might fall down the pecking order. Therefore, fine, let's just let him go. This might be the case. So it might just be a bit more complicated. I don't really see the point in the 5-year contract, but it might have been like, well, Celtic wanted to give him 3 years because of his age at the time. But he said, well, we'll sign 5 if you put these clauses in. It could be just a case of that.
I spoke to an ex-Celtic player last week, just a chance meeting.
Oh, here we go.
Yes.
How is bowling goalie?
Still horny. Still
signing
horny.
autographs again.
But he said that he'd heard that Giakoumakis wanted double his wages, and that's why he wanted to go. And I was like,
but he's not getting double his wages in Japan. I just had a look there. Your our Red Diamonds top players on 15 grand a week.
yeah, but that's what he's on the now. But all the reports seem to be is getting a big wage rise from Fabrizio Romano and all that seem to be saying that. I know the players there aren't there, so I took that with a pinch of salt last week because it was around the time where Giakoumakis' chat was quieting down. And then it so happens the guy said, look, he wanted to double his wages. He wanted to go from 12 to 24. Celtic said, look, no chance. He's going to Japan, and it was quieting down in Japan.
Is that double? Can you just check the maths on that?
Carry the one. It's something like that, yeah.
Okay, right, okay, carry on, Melly.
But then now it comes out that he's actually going to Japan, so maybe it was true. But for a player at 28-year-old to be doubling his wages to be on 24 grand, he's not first choice. There's no resale value, but I think somewhere in the middle you could have been met. But Celtic might have sight set on something else.
Let me ask you a question. Mischievous one,
Oh.
right? Who conducted these deals? It was Ange and Michael Nicholson, presumably, that got these deals in, right? What if Peter Law was still chairman and you were selling your first choice right back and a striker with the scoring record of Giakoumakis
For buttons,
buttons,
absolute peanuts after a year.
after a year or so, would it not be hitting the fan? Would people's perception of this not be wildly different?
Look, this is the criticism Celtic opened themselves up to the day they announced that deal.
I'm not saying he's involved now. I'm just saying,
been-
had he still been in row, if it wasn't Michael Nicholson today, how
Right,
would it be perceived?
so if he'd never left, so
Yes.
Peter Lawwell was here the entire time, and these are the kind of deals getting done. People would be furious. There's no doubt about it. Aye.
People never do this, but they would look at Peter Lawwell's transfer stuff and go, well, we were getting like big money for players. Even in the back in the days of like Danny Fox, we were doubling our money on a left back that we didn't really want anymore. We're not really doing that just now. We're just sort of moving guys on because they want more money or because they've got an option. How do you think the perception would be if the roles were reversed? And Mr. Lola did get your text, yes.
Yeah, look, I think it is a big difference is that Celtic are doing well and they're winning leagues and they seem to have a plan right now. Before it, when old Pistol Pete, you felt like, right, there's no reaction to that. Well, we are a reactive club rather than a proactive club, and I think Celtic have changed that about. So, yes, in maybe a week or two, if we brought somebody else in, we'll go, oh, do you know what, maybe now it makes sense. But if Celtic are winning, doing well, Giakoumakis isn't first choice, it makes it a wee bit easier. If Kyogo was to get injured on Wednesday night, then the panic buttons would start to get hit, and rightly so. So Celtic should have something lined up soon. We've seen them do it before, but I can't get away from the fact that I'm still disappointed in Giakoumakis as well. The fee, it's football fees, they don't really mean much because it depends on what a team's willing to pay for him. But I think Giakoumakis could have been a really good player for Celtic. He's been decent for a year now. He came back in January and was really good. I think he could have been a real cult hero now, and he's just sort of thrown that away from me.
Jamie, see what you said last week about Stephen Welsh. You said, do you think him sitting in the position he is, does he actually play for Celtic? You cited the old Brendan Rodgers quote about how you're just being in the door and having your own tracksuit and all that isn't you being a Celtic player. It's paraphrasing there, by the way. But
he was fond of that, wasn't he?
Yeah, yes. And the way I'm looking at Giakoumakis is, let's not underestimate the pull of being the main man somewhere as well.
That's a very handsome point.
He's 20, thank you.
Because I was coming on to that.
So he probably says, right, I'm at Celtic. It's a great place to be. It's the biggest club he's ever played for. He's been really successful there. But I've got 2 years left at the top here. I've got 2 years left in my athletic prime, maximum height. I want to be the main guy. I want to be Kyogo. I want to be, well, maybe not even Kyogo.
That why he's got to Japan?
Well, why not? He's never going to get a move to like a a Bundesliga tier, or see even if he does, see if he goes to England, see if he goes and signs for Southampton or something, he's third choice striker there. What was the point of that?
Apparently there are other options on the table, but this is the most concrete one for him. Other clubs are interested in him. I think Atalanta was mentioned in teams in the MLS, but I think it's a very good point.
These are questions we ask of players all the time. Well, where's your ambition? Why do you not want to play football and all that sort of thing? So why, I mean, if that is his primary motivation, as well as the wage rise that we've speculated on, again, we assume that he's going to get a decent whack over there. But if he's got a chance to go over there and be a proper fans' hero, the number one guy at the club, the striker that's going to play every single time, none of this getting brought on with 15 minutes to go and all that, which is kind of his now default position here, then that's a pull for players, especially a guy who has got to this stage of his career. We said last week that he's all of a sudden his career has picked up momentum out of nowhere. A long time of doing absolutely nothing. Then he hits this amazing season in the Netherlands, and then he uses that to springboard to Celtic. Had another good season. His career's picking up momentum just as he's getting towards 30. Being the number one guy is going to be a big pull for a guy like that.
Maybe Giakoumakis came to Celtic on the promise of Kyogo's my number one. He's always going to be my number one. We're going to bring this guy in, but you can battle for your place. You'll always have a chance. And he's went, okay, I'll give it 18 months.
That's fair enough. If that's the case, we're having a look at it from all sides. Playing football, brilliant, mate. Do what makes you happy. But I just feel it could have been, from my point of view, I think he could have been a real good Celtic player.
Well, any striker that comes in, aren't they? They're going to be second choice to Kyogo, realistically.
Yeah, realistically. But we've seen from Kyogo that he does get injured, or he does need rest, or he'll go through a wee spell where he needs taken out. Celtic have got a lot of games. So, yes, you are backup, but that doesn't mean you're not featuring in every game. Pretty much you're going to play a game a week maybe, so it's a squad game these days. But do you think, thinking about it now, I'm disappointed he's going, obviously I've mentioned that a lot, but I'm looking at Giakoumakis, and as much as I love him, he frustrates the hell out of me when he's playing. Like at the weekend there, just if Celtic are doing something and I'm always like that, don't foul him, don't foul him, don't foul him. Every single time Giakoumakis fouls him, and just wee things like that, some of his touches in the middle of the park, you're like, you ever seen a football, mate? Do you think because of his scoring rate and all that we maybe overrate him? Because if you're looking at him going to Japan, have we maybe thought, oh, he's better than that? Is he?
No, because I think a lot of do we think he's maybe better than he is and he ends up in Japan? No, but I just think players get criticised for being lacking technical ability but always being in the right place at the right time to finish the goals, but that's obviously very difficult.
That's a technique itself.
Yeah, because there's dozens, hundreds of thousands of footballers going through time
who've seen a lot of them.
We've seen a lot who've tried that. You know, we thought that was a Yeti. We thought the guy can't run, but he pops up in the right places and gets the finishes, and obviously he doesn't.
See what we're describing Giakoumakis in these terms as well, and I do agree, is that he's a huge player, a huge fan's favourite, and has been very effective, but maybe that's another answer to this conundrum as well, or to this mystery. Maybe Ange has basically just decided he doesn't really want him anymore, and it might just be that all the things we're talking about, they're popping up at the right place, these opportunistic finishes he scores all the time, and there was another one in the cup final just in the right position. Maybe he wants that but better, that bit faster, better on the ball, more technically. The guys have been linked with, I know this is another transfer saga that is had no conclusion, but Cho has been linked with. Maybe he's just seen as that guy, but just an upgrade. That might just be the case.
Just to sort of put a button on it, I think also the wages thing is something we need to consider. We've got a massive squad. We ran through it recently in another podcast. It's quite bloated at the moment. If these guys have taken lump Juranovic in, if both of them are more than £12,000, and we're like, look, if you want to give him 24 grand, we can, but it means you can't bring in anybody else, then maybe we're saying, well, look, do you know what? With that money, I'm pretty confident in some of the options I've identified, I can bring someone else in. So we'll put a wee button on the Giakoumakis thing, and we'll have the mystery transfer saga once again probably next week when it comes when Juranovic leaves.
You better go this time. I'm getting sick. I don't know if you're sitting here again next Monday talking about his peak value and all that kind of stuff. I'll be furious.
Like, don't come back for any Giakoumakis chat, right? He's done now, unless he gets a big move somewhere, surprises us. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year from our friends at Manscaped. The ball has officially officially dropped, but that doesn't mean you have to drop the ball on your balls in 2023. Whether you had a New Year's kiss or not, the leaders in the below-the-waist grooming have got you covered for your much-needed resolution of bringing sexy back. Join the 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code TIMS for 20% off and free shipping. Let's have a toast for a new year, a new you with no pubes.
It's a new year, new balls with the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming. This year, take your package to the next level with a Performance Package 4.0 and other premium wet goods. Inside the Performance Package 4.0, you'll find a signature Lawnmower 4.0. The advanced skin-safe technology reduces cuts and nicks on your delicate parts. It also comes equipped with a 4000K LED spotlight that will shine a light to the promised land 2023 looks to be. Cheers to new balls in 2023.
Get 20% off and free shipping with the code TIMS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code TIMS. Time to feel sexy and free this 2023 with Manscaped. What was the score against Kilmarnock in the last league game? 2-0.
2-0, yes.
We beat them 2-0 at Celtic Park. After that, someone in Kilmarnock, someone in Ayrshire, fired up the computer, opened Twitter, wrote, different ball game next week. See you at Hampden. 2-0 again. Exactly the same ball game, same score, same everything. The only difference was, I suppose, the pitch, which was melee makes the noise. It astounds me, the state of that pitch. We won't get into the Hampden rant. We'll talk about how bad Hampden is in a minute. I just want to initially touch on how bad the pitch was. For a semi-final, the showpiece occasion, the pitch doesn't get played on weekly anymore. It's not like Queen's Park are sitting chewing up the pitch every other week. It's just sitting there.
You're going to say QPR there?
I was going to say QPR. QP?
Yeah, QP.
No R. So that was very surprising to me, Melly. Anything else surprising to you?
No, it was abysmal. When you got to the game, when you made it through that weather and seen the pitch, but that's new. It should be new. What's happening here?
Is it diseased like our pitch from a few years ago?
Yeah,
Remember that?
Minded the clap for a bit. But,
God,
I've used that one before.
That's fine.
But it was abysmal, and it was when you seen the players running, you're like, oh, that's terrible. And look, I know there's been a lot of rainfall, but that was really, really poor for a showpiece event where that pitch is getting used twice in the one weekend. I know the weather was disgraceful, but for it to cut up like that very quickly in the first half was very poor. And it's not the first time we've had the complaints about the Hampden pitch. It happens maybe every second season, so something has to be done about it.
Can weather be disgraceful? Is that a bit talk sport of, is it? It's an absolute it's a disgrace.
Yeah, it suggests something can be done about it. But I mean, we've all spoken about Hampden Park on this podcast. Every time we go, we come back going like, the place is a dump. You can't get a decent pint near it. You have to walk for miles. It's always, why is it always pouring the rain anytime you seem to be at Hampden? It blows a gale. It's crap. The whole thing's absolutely crap. I got a chicken curry pie at Hampden before. It definitely wasn't chicken in it. It definitely wasn't chicken in it. But I got a doner meat pie at Celtic Park once, and it was the same meat. So there's like, I don't. It was weird, but anyway, that's another complaint. The catering at Hampden's not really
generic matter pie.
Yeah, generic matter pie. Right, let's turn our attention to the game again.
Yeah, well, for all these reasons, I mean, see when you talk up this game, terrible weather, terrible conditions, howling a wind,
terrible opponents.
Exactly. A Derek McInnes team on a massive pitch, right? When you factor all these things in, the game definitely has a ceiling of quality. It's definitely you can only expect so much, even from a team like Celtic. How you turn that into a good footballing spectacle is beyond me. It was a not so great game. I thought Celtic did decently well. I don't think they turned it into the footballing spectacle we hoped. But impossible, absolutely impossible. It was only ever going to be a maximum of a 4 out of 10 from any one.
I mean, you do
team
have a degree of sympathy with the players. In that one, it's difficult to get enthusiastic to play your football in those sort of conditions, especially when you go 1-0 up, 2-0 up. You're not going to start doing very much. You just want to get, you just want to get in.
No, because we were in row RR, so we're far back enough. But you're looking at the wind, and you're like, what way is that swirling? Because it's going all over the place. You're looking at the rain flying everywhere, and then you're looking at the pitch underfoot. And the game wasn't great, and I was getting a wee bit frustrated with Celtic throughout the game. But then, as soon as the whistle went, Celtic had won it. I was like, you know what? I'm glad this is over because I get to leave and go into warmth. So I can't imagine what the players were going. I wasn't getting wet during the game, but it was horrific conditions. But these cup semi-finals, like Celtic negotiate them all the time, and this is a team that has negotiated semi-finals, but for this club to go through so many semi-finals, go to Hampden so many times, win so many times, get to so many finals, it's an incredible achievement that we're going through right now. It's like success. It's just sheer success that Celtic are either in the final, winning it, or in the semi-final. Or they're just always there or thereabouts.
You just expect Celtic to make semi-finals now, don't
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Like, you may as well just drop us in the tournament at the semi-final because we're going to get there anyway.
And
that'll be Lowell's next move. The unseen Fenian hand again.
That brings me on to the point that we do expect it now, and we expect it. Right, we beat Kilmarnock last week. Let's just go out and batter them this week as if that's how it works out. And I was disappointed at the game that the conditions weren't there, but the game was still there to be won. Celtic had to go out and win it, and they done their job. It wasn't pretty at times. It was never going to be pretty in that. I seen a wee bit of the Rangers game and the quality was just as bad. Aberdeen, another terrible team. So it gets difficult. These semi-finals, rarely do you go into them. Even finals as well, we should bar them. It doesn't work out like that. You still have to go out and win the game, and Celtic done that.
Just the final thing in the way, I felt bad for Jota. That guy's probably never played football in his whole entire life. He probably didn't know weather like that existed. He was probably expecting the game to get called off. But we're actually going to play it. We're going to play in this. No chance. Aaron MOOY was good again.
Oh yeah, excellent, absolutely excellent. Controlled everything, and it's just an absolutely. Just a really enjoyable footballer to watch. So nice on the ball, so confident, so in control. It just exudes this. I've been here and done that control over the game.
I don't know if you remember a couple of months back on the podcast that I was saying that one thing you don't see in the Scottish League anymore is like the Eremenkos, the old pros that turn up. I've made that
a reference that is.
I says you don't really see that on the podcast. You don't really see that in Scottish football anymore. Then lo and behold, a couple of months later, we've got our very own.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he uses, that sort of class, that style.
Definitely, and it's like you still see him. He's much fitter than he was when they first came, and that was always the talk about how. See, once he gets up to full speed, and I'm doing big inverted commas for speed. Right? Once he gets up to full speed, he'll be a different player, and that has proven to be the case. Still very slow, but it doesn't really matter though, because he doesn't need
Look up here.
Exactly. Miley taps his temple for the benefit of audio listeners only.
That's on camera.
Yeah, for the benefit of audio listeners only.
It's a podcast, man.
It doesn't seem to matter for him because he, as I say, he just exudes this "I've got this" energy on the pitch. He's a mile ahead of his opponents in every way. There was a moment in I think it was probably the first half actually, where he's swarmed by Kilmarnock players, and they started kind of reasonably quite well and quite quickly. Surrounded, just did a little gentle Cruyff turn inside, and all of a sudden just bought himself 10 yards of space. Yeah, just a really great player to watch. And not only just that, it's not like he's just swanning about there picking out like glorious passes and all that to look good. He's massively contributing to this. Set pieces as well, very good set pieces. So yeah, he's contributing in a big way now.
Does he take Matt Riley's place off him?
Currently, yeah, I think he has. I think the three midfielders, the three that are in now, they're on form. I think he's been great recently, Moy. The performance against Hibs at Easter Road was brilliant. I thought he was a bit hard done by in the Rangers game, maybe. Comes on, sort of changes the game, him and Jota, and I thought he's been brilliant. Just brilliant, a good guy to watch. Yes, he's slow, but I don't care because everything else is brilliant.
Yeah,
Everything's brilliant, so you can... It levels itself. In fact, it doesn't level itself out because he's better at so many more things that you just go, I don't care. I love watching him play as well. Matt O'Reilly, I think, will be back at some point, but right now it's the three that are in there, and deservedly so. Celtic have got plenty of games, so nothing to worry about. I couldn't understand why Celtic signed him at the start. Now I can't understand how Celtic would play without him. And it's like, well, it's as if Ange Postecoglou knows so much more than me. He's been brilliant. I thought he'd play a different role. He's shown he can play in that midfield role, and he's got a bit of everything in his game. He works really hard, but he's also got that touch of class, and he's starting to be the set pieces makes a difference, and he's a bit of a goal threat now as well. I think he will score more goals. So I was even thinking after the game, I was like, do we extend his contract or do we
How
just
long
let
is
it?
his deal? 18 months, 2 years?
Yeah,
Well,
it was
I think he's got it was a year with an option. Then
That's
when he
right.
signed, it was maybe 2 years. So I think it'll be one of those ones we can have a look at the end of the season.
When you actually look back on the transfer now, something of a bit of a coup
Oh,
for Celtic
yeah.
as well. When we all looked at it at the time and thought, oh, don't know what's going on
We
here.
thought it was too obvious, didn't we?
Yeah. Just it was the type of guy who'll always be linked with an Ange team because he's Australian, basically, and because he's formerly played in Scotland and the UK more broadly. But when you look back, like, to be able to get a guy of that like undeniable quality now for next to nothing and get him in a couple of years, I mean, he's already proven that he can go to China and make serious money. What was it? It was on something crazy in China, supposedly. He's already proven that he can go and do what Giakoumakis is doing just now, just going to some. I don't want to be disrespectful here, but non-traditional European or like proper like traditional footballing country, if that makes any sense. He's not going to
You're
Germany
trying to
or
find a way
Italy.
to describe the world without being disrespectful.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. So Moy has already proven he can do that if he wants to. He could have gone and played in Qatar or something like that. He could easily get to 30 or I think maybe 31 by the time Celtic signed him. He could have gone and played in Saudi Arabia or something
Yeah,
like that.
probably had those
churn
offers.
another 2 years out. But he's come to Celtic because he wants to prove that he's still a footballer rather than one of these kind of travelling journeyman guys who just jump to these countries for the money. So fair play to him for doing that, and he's proven his worth.
Big I got this energy from Aaron Moy. Is one thing where everyone's talking about how slow he was. I did like there was a point later on in the second half, it might have been, he was on the edge of the Kilmarnock box and it was like did a slow motion 360 and got a shot off with his left foot, and like it was really slow. No one could do it. I thought Kilmarnock started the game quite well. They put a lot of pressure on us, and as I was watching that I thought to myself, why don't you ever do this in the league? I don't want to dwell on that point too much. I thought the same against Aberdeen. Like these two teams, they seem to give it their all for semi-finals. I'm like, right, okay, but it's not like you don't run out of energy. You can do that last week, and you can do it every week. And I'm sure their managers maybe think the same thing half the time.
Well, there's no 0-0 to be had in a semi-final, I suppose, is there?
But not to back and forth. It's a point you've made. You're not going to get 0-0 at Celtic Park anyway. You mean it's in fact it's what you've been sort of saying. The point you might as well try. And they show they can do it in these cup semi-finals.
It brings us back nicely to remember we sat here after that first game after the break, and you said, Jim Goodwin, this can seriously derail your season. One win in what, nearly is it
6 or something?
it might be even more
Is
than
it?
that.
Nice.
So like you can see why. Like they went into that game yesterday on a hiding to nothing. They got into extra time, but to go into that game losing 6 or 7 games in a row, get one win. This is why you're like, why don't you just go out and play football and try and enjoy it? Not Jim Goodwin.
No, not Jim Goodwin.
Not Derek McInnes.
Not Derek McInnes either. One man that thought he was going to enjoy it was Kyle Lafferty.
Dumpling.
I know.
Absolute pounder.
I was going to. I mean, I was going to wait to discuss the goal, but I mean, well, do you know what? Let's just go through the run roll I've got here because we're going to get to goal shortly, and it does tie into what I want to talk about next. So they did start it. He was causing some problems, particularly for Starfelt. I wasn't too impressed with the left side of Celtic's defence.
No, that was a problem again. Starfelt had another one of his Hampden moments in the first half. He gave the ball away twice quite badly. Once was exacerbated by the surface because they played an admittedly quite poor ball into Juranovic, but Juranovic slipped and then all of a sudden Kilmarnock broke away with it. However, I forgive him for the second one because it gave us one of the most genuinely hilarious moments of the first half when he gave the ball straight to Kyle Lafferty and Lafferty shot from about 50 yards, miles and miles over the bar. Kyle Lafferty's, again, we may as well open the floor to talking about that absolute pudding of a play.
Okay, just before we do, can I just make something clear to every journalist and pundit and everyone? Kyle Lafferty did a bad thing, right? Without getting too much into the weeds of it, right? Because you can go read our Twitter feed. We ranted about it there. He did a bad thing, and you don't sort of congratulate the return of him. Oh, he's choked the play against Celtic. Oh God, he did a bad thing. And
He's doing star jumps, remember?
He was doing star jumps, and it's not the responsibility of only Celtic fans to be annoyed at this. We all should be annoyed at what Kyle Lafferty said and did, unless, of course, you think he was specifically talking to that one gentleman in the nightclub, which we know he wasn't. We know that he was expressing beliefs that he has about lots of people who stay in this country. So that's really all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah, well, one journalist mentioned numerous times on this podcast in the past, decided that it was in fact a battle of who could take the moral high ground. The moral high ground. What on earth is this? See if Kyle Lafferty decides to use sectarian language in a nightclub. See if he decides to be a 35-year-old, twice married father of 3 in a nightclub in this day and age, right? and
almost as heinous as using the language.
and then use the sectarian language. That's nothing to do with moral high ground,
No,
mate.
it's not.
And it's nothing to do with Celtic either.
No,
it's
it's
absolutely nothing to do with them.
That's exactly my point. It's not a competition, you and Murray, between, see, it's almost not as bad because some Celtic fans say, yeah, he's not just insulting Celtic fans with that one. He's insulting our parents and our grandparents and people who don't watch Celtic and every one of that particular. That's who he's insulting. So it doesn't really balance off in the way you think it does. But that's the problem, Stephen and Melly, with the traditional media. They now see it as their job to be pals with footballers and to protect footballers against criticism. And that's why you should support our podcast, because we don't do that. I know I'm being cynical there, but it's the bloody truth.
Well done.
Indeed.
Yeah, it is the bloody truth.
So Kyle Lafferty, right? So he comes back, he shoots for the halfway line, and he gets hooked at half time.
Scores an own goal. Well, come on.
It wasn't on target, but we're going to give him credit for it.
Yeah.
If anything, the star jumps thing, right? So he was doing star jumps and bringing Derek McInnes breakfast. And all that. He should maybe eased off a few of the star jumps because he was absolutely knackered. I feel like Derek McInnes must have been at the side of the pitch like, well, I've been bumming you up all week in the media. Do you remember that old video? In fact, it was a couple of years ago now. It was a postman getting into trouble because there was a wee old woman fell in the street or at her door or something like that, and he just walked past and didn't do anything. He just said, I can't help you, I'm knackered.
No, I
can't help you, I'm too knackered, and just kept walking. I feel like Kyle Lafferty was given that sort of energy to Derek McInnes.
But this is the thing, right, Melly? Derek McInnes is a football manager, right? Supposedly a serious individual with a cup semi-final to win. He would have known Kyle Lafferty was not fit enough to play in that game, not fit enough to play any impact in that game whatsoever. But he thought Kyle Lafferty's ruddy energy, all that built up inside of him, he thought, that'll push him through. It's a meme. You basically had a mascot up front there.
Go and get the flute. G Kyle up before the game. Go and get the drums.
He stuck a mascot up front to influence the game. And you know what? I'm glad he did. I'm glad that he had one of those horror shows where he was effectively responsible for a goal, shot for the halfway line, get hooked at half time. Couldn't have went better for the guy. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Kyle. There was a wee moment right at the start of the game where I think he won a corner or a throw in, and the ball sort of came back to him. It was out of play, so he does a wee keep up with the ball, and the Celtic fans are booing, and he just has this smirk on his face. He's like, oh mate, so if we beat you, I'd love it. I'd love it if we beat them.
He's got the headphones on and everything.
But then for him to have that absolute howler of a game where he does absolutely nothing, causes the goal, then is looking about, shouting as if, who can I blame here? Oh, there's nobody to blame but myself. All the time, all your life you go through, like Kieran Tierney scoring against Man City, like, give it to Tierney. This one I'm like, give it to Lafferty, give it to the guy that scored the OG. My disappointments from the game regarding him.
Yeah, that's enough Lafferty talk. He's had more than enough time in the podcast.
Oh no, I've just got
one more.
You've got one more.
So the disappointments were, it wasn't an OG credited to him. The second disappointment was he got hooked at half time, so we didn't get to see him trudge off the pitch like the Halliday one. That was class, because he should have been hooked well before that, because he was miles off it.
See, when he did that with the goal, you can almost see him as well. Like he tries to just sort of shepherd it out of play, right? Do the wee kind of volley at the back post that puts it out for a corner. You can almost see him waiting for the congratulations from the keeper for a great bit of defending. The ball comes over and he just sort of ushers it out of play.
He thought he was on the pitch himself.
Exactly.
He was surprised to find two Celtic players standing behind him. That's why he was so angry.
With that goal, I was over the other side, so down the other side, so it's a Celtic goal. Yes, lovely stuff. And then it wasn't until John Paul with me got the replay, and then you seen the ball going, like, who was that at the back post that done that? It's Lafferty.
It's quite easy to pick out of a crowd, Kyle Lafferty, because he has orange boots on all the time.
Celtic's left side of the defence. You brought that up about 10 minutes ago.
My dad texts the group chat occasionally when he's watching Celtic games. He just texts, Bernabei is rubbish.
Yeah.
And
Big Totty. A wee Totty with you.
Who was it used to call a Totty, my dad?
Jan Vennegar.
Jan Vennegar. He hated Jan Vennegar. But he just put in the group chat, Bernabei is rubbish. And you know what? It's difficult to disagree with my dad on that one.
Right, Bernabei. It still applies now, right? It still applies that it's early days for him. And I think Ange has said recently that he's played a little bit more than he would have expected by this point.
Yes.
And we said when Greg Taylor got injured that this is an opportunity for him because the position's his, right? But I have to say I'm quite worried about it now.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit worried with his contribution because I'm not concerned about the chat about his age. I'm not really buying that yet because, yes, he is quite young, but also...
22 for those.
He's kind of young.
Is he 22 now?
He's 22, so he's the same age as Matt O'Reilly. He's the same age as Abada. But more pressingly than that, he is significantly older than some of our best players over the last 5 or 6 years. Guys who were expected to carry this team, significantly older than Kieran Tierney, than Christopher Ajer, than Moussa Dembele, than Odsonne Edouard, than Jeremy Frimpong, all these guys, right? So the age for me isn't a factor.
Yeah.
What is a factor, what I will stick up for him, is that none of those guys came from Argentina and had to adapt to...
He's probably never played in weather like that either.
Exactly. So none of those guys came from as far-flung a place as that, having never played in Europe before. So that's where I will stick up for him. I'm not moved by the chat that he's too young to contribute just now. I don't think that's the case. I think 22 is plenty old enough to be contributing. I'm not seeing anything with him. Did he come off the bench against Hibs and actually looked quite good, didn't he? I think
he has flashes, doesn't he?
Yeah, he definitely does.
Flashes.
There's definitely something there, but we need to see a wee bit more from him. And he's a little bit headless chicken just now. Now I've got plenty of room in my heart for an agent of chaos in a football team, but there is
just not at left back.
A razor thin line between agent of chaos and headless chicken, and he's starting to take just wee steps towards the wrong side of that.
See, if I was being kind about Bernabei, Martin Melly, I would say that the part of the game he seems to be struggling with is the tactical side of it, playing further up, playing further inside. He is a bit headless chicken, and you wonder, is he just taking a while to adapt to the way that we want to play? Now, that's not an excuse, because everyone that's come in the door at the same time as him has adapted. Yeah. But if you're being charitable, is that one thing you would say, or do you just think he's rubbish?
Possibly, but the things that I'm worried about are the sheer basics of the one in the first half where it was right on the byline and the guy goes past him, and there's ones in the second half where the ball's been played inside him as well, and I'm just like, these are the basics, and that's on top of the passing straight to other players. He's not looking good, and I want the guy to do well. I will give him more time. He is still young, but I can't help but think, right, back when Bolingoli signed, was I giving Bolingoli this much leeway before I said he's no very good at football? I think the ceiling's higher with Bernabei, but...
So he is, the age thing doesn't, but he was a lot younger than Bolingoli. Bolingoli came as the sort of... I think the difference there is Bolingoli came as a finished product. Yeah. Whereas we bought Bernabei in the understanding that he had a bit of improving to do.
Yeah, and... with Bolingoli, I'm like, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. Whereas Bernabei, I have seen flashes of, do you know what? He is pacey. He is going good forward. I'm not even getting that off him right now. So the bad things aren't being outweighed by the good that he does in the game. Look, it's difficult conditions, difficult pitch and all that. He did get better sort of as the game went on, but that's only because he set such a low standard for himself from the start. So I think it might just be a wee confidence thing as well, because look, at these games are difficult when you're coming over. You are a small guy. He doesn't shirk it. He doesn't hide, which I'll give him that. But I just want to see better from the basics. The letting guys drift past you and letting balls go in behind you. If teams see that, they're going to target it. So you need to deal with it. And he has to deal with it better for me. But I still think I'm going to give him time.
And that deserves said again as well, because I know we opened up earlier by saying the various conditions and the circumstances of this game placed a very low ceiling on the quality of this game. It deserves to be said again that we are viewing Bernabei's performance through that lens as well. It's probably unlikely that a guy like that is going to stand out in a game. It's not impossible, because he's there. He's a professional footballer. He could be the man of the match, but I think it's harsh to judge him fully on that. But I think, having watched them closely, because he's a new signing, we're always excited about those. So having watched them closely, there is definitely something there. Huh? I just want to kind of see where it's going, and I don't want to see this kind of regression. Yes, he might be playing a wee bit more than he would have expected at this time, but sometimes that's how it happens. That's how football happens. Yeah. You look back to maybe a go-to example I always think of, like Moussa Dembele was 19 when Griffiths got injured before that 5-1 game, and he went on. He took that opportunity, never looked back, and became...
I'll never forget the chat before that game about how Celtic got on without Griffiths and all that. That was unbelievably, that was the pattern.
Yeah, so he took that opportunity, ran with it, and became one of Celtic's best players in the last couple of decades. Moussa Dembele, all at a very young age. I want to stress that, hasten to add, I'm not expecting Bernabei to do that. I don't want him to be Moussa Dembele. I do want him to be Moussa Dembele. I don't expect him to be Moussa Dembele. But, sometimes what I'm saying is sometimes this is how it falls for you. These are the opportunities that are presented to you as a footballer, and you kind of need to take them. I'm not making any lasting judgments on the guy at all. It's still early and he's still got a lot of potential, but I'm a little bit concerned with how he's been playing recently. 18,
19 maybe, but 22 where he has been a first team player. And look, the players that look good in that game were guys like MOOY, McGregor, who have been there and done it, who are calm on the ball. That's not really Bernabei's game. I'm really needing to see something from him. Look, Celtic have got a decent run of games coming up. We've got St Mirren and Morton, so I would expect to see better from him, but I need to see something soon.
I'm going to pull you up here. You said the guys that were good in that game were MOOY and McGregor. I think another guy that deserves a bit of credit once again is Daizen Maeda, especially for the finish that never was.
Yeah. It was a game of a lack of quality, but these players showed quality in a different way with a hard-working endeavour.
McGregor was excellent, by the way. Just in case we go too far without mentioning that, I thought he was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, because even he was giving away loose balls, so I thought, maybe there is something in this pitch. But he was driving forward, him and MOOY, and Daizen Maeda again. It's why if you work hard, things will fall for you, because he was brilliant. And look, he scores great goals, he scores weird goals, and this was another one in off his chest because he's in there making a nuisance of himself, and he deserves every bit of it. The run he's on right now, goal scoring wise, is incredible, but also the work he puts in. And Stephen, you always talk about it, like some of it you don't notice, but because sitting at Hampden, I'm sitting somewhere different, you just see some of the runs he makes. And there was one time where KILMARNOCK right back got the ball, was looking up the pitch to play it up, takes his touch, plays it up. Maeda started over in the centre forward position, sprints over, closes the guy down and blocks the cross, blocks the ball, and it goes out for a shy. That's just completely taken any pressure off Celtic. Celtic can come up the pitch and put pressure back on KILMARNOCK, and it's just these wee things that the guy does. You're like, you deserve everything you get because you do these wee things. It was a game for guys like him. It was a game for guys like him where they'll make the difference because they're working hard. They've got a bit of quality, but they can put themselves through it, and he done that. I've just love watching the guy play these days.
He was unlucky with the Kyogo offside.
Oh, that was a finish and a half.
I've got issues with that. I've got issues with that. Not that I'm not disputing the offside as it stands. He was offside. I just don't think the offside rule should be a rule in football now that can really only be determined by computer interference or camera interference. The referee on the day, like no referee in the world is going to pick up that Kyogo's heel is offside when the ball's played into him. There's no linesman possibly that could pick that up. So that's a decision that only a computer can really make.
And even if they could, so what? What's the advantage being gained there? It's absurd to me. I think that this is one of those occasions where it's disappointing that Maeda was robbed of that goal. Celtic were robbed of the goal, of course, as well. But even him, because with that goal, he would have been firmly the big thing about that game. History, it doesn't matter about the quality of the game. What history would have read years from now is that in a turgid, sort of stuffy affair against dogged Kilmarnock, Daizen Maeda rose to the occasion and dragged Celtic through with 2 goals at one of amazing quality. That's what it would have said had that goal counted, but it wasn't to be. He did get 1 goal, but I'm kind of glad that after a series of absolutely beautiful finishes from him, he's back to scoring the eyesores that we know he's capable of with that Lafferty thing. But quite aside from the disappointment from Celtic's point of view and personally, individually, Maeda's point of view, it's an example of why VAR and the rules as they stand just now.
Is this Super Vario World? Not technically.
Well,
no, it's not
sorry,
technical.
it's adjacent. VAR adjacent. It's another example.
Vario Kart.
Just trying to think of another one now.
Vario Party.
It's another example of why the rules and the implementation of VAR don't serve football itself, because all that did was just take away a brilliant goal. Yes, you could say it's offside, and it is offside under the current rules, but where was the advantage being gained by Kyogo facing away from goal with his heel slightly off the ground in advance of the defenders? No one is convincing me that that's an advantageous position to take up, because he's basically in line with the defender and one of his feet happens to be slightly off centre. It's, to me,
faced away for goal.
It's broader than that. It's not a Celtic problem. We've lost sight of what these things are supposed to do. Why are we bringing things into football. I'm not just talking about VAR, but the rules. Why are we bringing wordings of rules in that seek to, right, how can we take this goal away? How can we chop this off? Let's find something. There's a heel. The goal doesn't stand and never will.
Yeah,
so that's
dumb.
So why? How does this serve football? How does this make anyone's experience any better? Yeah, it makes Kilmarnock's experience slightly better in that the goal didn't count. But I mean, really, that will happen to them at some point as well.
Yeah.
Probably these daft rules. So I was disappointed with that, to be honest. No got a leg to stand on, no got a heel to stand on because of the wording of the rule. But it's just that, as I say, it just doesn't serve football at all. This
couple of peaches. Remember the Jota goal at Motherwell, was it? That was
the
chalked?
one we never saw.
Aye. And then that one. Goals like that shouldn't be disallowed for wee minor infringements like that. It was a great bit of play from Celtic. The whole move was absolutely class. The flick, the awareness from Hugo, and even the finish from Maeda was like Henri-esque, wasn't it? It was brilliant. It was a great goal. And when it happened in the ground, and then you're like, what are they possibly checking here? Because like, Maeda ran into it. Just he didn't see how it was going to be disallowed in any way. And then after, you're like, oh, come on, man, it's not very fair that something of that quality can be taken away for. And is it even an infringement?
Like an inch of his heel that was offside.
Yeah.
It's pointless. I don't want to spend too much time talking about like the officiating because it's boring.
Yeah,
the Maeda, the Hatate offside as well was a bit of a weird one. The interfering with play rule that everyone's been discussing with reflection of Rashford and all that this week sort of been highlighted. The big thing that everyone was talking about off the back of the game, including Derek McInnes, was the Giakoumakis foul. Or non-foul as it was, no penalty. I'm of a mind, Melly, to say that if that happened this year, they'll probably be looking for a penalty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you were to go round again like we did last week, pen. Should I do that?
Yeah, okay, so pen, for me it's a pen.
Right, pen.
There we go.
Yeah, I think it's so clumsy from him. It's something that frustrates me about him as well. Instead of just holding his ground, whether he's facing the ball or facing a player, he just barges right through. So clumsy at that point in the game. The guy, whether you think it's a dive or not, Giakoumakis has put that guy in that position. Like, you've got a big, massive guy coming through the back of you. I think if it happens anywhere else on the pitch, which is stupid, you're looking at me and I realise what I said.
Keep going, it's fine. Nobody's saying anything.
And if it happens anywhere else in the pitch, like they always say, then I think it would have been a foul for it not to be given there. I think I would be screaming for it. I'd think it's a penalty as well, so I can understand why Kilmarnock think it's a penalty. Still think if they had got the penalty, Celtic would have went on and won the game. But look, we say it, we've said it time after time and time again. If you think we're paranoid, moaning about refs, don't come back here when you don't get a decision from one of the refs who we repeatedly highlight saying is terrible at his job. Willie Collum tried to make that game about himself. Twice in one half, the ball hit him from passes trying to go through. Yeah. So this guy wants to be in the middle. I'm surprised he didn't give it, to be honest, because I always say he gives penalties he doesn't see. Yeah. So I heard
someone on another podcast, or even it might even be the radio, only last week saying, I honestly wish I could credit the person, but it was a great point. They're going, their point was, I don't think Willie Collum knows what a penalty looks like. And then someone replied, well, yeah, because he only gives them when it happens behind them. Yeah. And that's kind of where that comes from. I just think it's fine now, though. I'm glad that happened because we can all stop being paranoid.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the referees. Keith Jackson of the Daily Record, the sports editor, wrote a wonderful column saying today, the non-penalty of Giakoumakis should put all conspiracy theories to bed. And I thought to myself, who's got the conspiracy theories? Some fringe nuts on the internet might think there's a massive conspiracy going on again. That's not what we're talking about here. The conversation for weeks has been about how bad referees are, and it is so weird to me that journalists in this country, once again, are like, you know that meme where a poo from The Simpsons is like jumping in front of a bullet? They're doing this. They're taking bullets for Kyle Lafferty. They're fucking taking bullets for... It's like, it's that Naked Gun where O.J. Simpson gets shot and he stands in a rake and all that. You know that? You know that one that ends up... It's like that. Oh, refs. Oh, bang. Oh, Kyle Lafferty. Bang. Oh, shite, man. It's like... Just, it's okay. We're allowed to say the refs are crap because they are crap. And there you go. Was Willie Collum crap for not giving that penalty?
Yeah. In my opinion, I mean,
there you go.
The end result doesn't really matter, but the reason, as you've said, the reason this is a debate and it's worth talking about just now, despite the fact that it doesn't matter, Celtic in our shared opinions now, got away with one there. But the reason it's worth talking about is because we're going to have this cast up at us for the rest of time now, because we got that decision.
Do you know what Ange should have said after the game? Ange should have said after the game, look, I've been critical of VAR for weeks and critical about what's happening, and there's VAR missed another one. We should have we should have conceded a penalty and VAR's missed it.
Yeah.
That would have sent the cat right amongst the pigeons if he did that. Imagine the manager coming out and criticising the ref for not giving a penalty against them.
Yeah, well, again, he's never going to do that, of course, because that would be insane. But there was always
That's would be insane. It'd be unusual.
But it's the point. But we can't just really speak for anyone else. But the point we've been trying to make is that it's about the refs. Like, no one can see that. No one can ever see the bigger picture. It's always just Celtic fans this, Rangers fans do that. So let's just slag each other back if a decision goes this. So I'm willing to admit that should have been a penalty. I was astonished it wasn't given as a penalty, because it would have been the easiest thing in the world. And see, if that was given as a penalty, I don't think there's a single thing we could have said about it. How do you defend that? The guy went over a wee bit too easily and all that. But then you're into the realms of that's not quite enough contact for me, which isn't really a thing. That's the kind of thing people only say when you know it's a foul, but you don't want it to be.
It would have been he gave the ref a decision to make. That's the first thing.
Let me play devil's advocate here, right? And I'm so reluctant to do this, right? But I think we need to be fair to ourselves in this podcast and have integrity in our arguments sometimes in this podcast. So dignity. But no, seriously, we have to have integrity. So we have on this podcast in the past said sometimes referees don't want to make decisions because they don't want to be the headline. They don't want to be all the talk, all the paper talk, because blah, 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 blah. For the last fortnight, all the discussion has been, and there's been a lot of discussion in particular, about penalties given against Celtic that are not given against Rangers. Given Willie Collum is probably not a man of great testicular fortitude, is he going into that game going, oh my God, please don't make me give a penalty against Celtic. Please don't make me give a penalty against Celtic, because all we're talking about this week is penalties against Celtic. And that guy hits the deck and he's like, no chance, I'm not giving that. I was nearly
out of here in 3 minutes. Come on, guys, just ignore it.
One thing we didn't want to happen, and he's like, do you know what, I'll just turn a blind eye to it. And then the VAR, they're like, nope, didn't see a thing, carry on.
Aye, quite possibly.
What I'm saying comically, but what I mean is, do you think in any way that the pressure got to the ref at any point? Do you think that permeates the refs in a way that would benefit Celtic?
What I would say is it's probably different given the time of the game it was. It's probably easier to just not give it at that time of the game when it is. Again, I couldn't imagine what's going on in these people's heads. But
see, if that game had went extra time, I would have been furious.
Oh yeah, I know. For us, tens of thousands of people absolutely baying. We can't feel their faces anymore. Now we've got to sit through another half an hour of this.
Thanks, Willie Collum.
That's no say Kilmarnock would have scored the thing right enough, but I don't know is the answer to that. I think it might be easier to just ignore it, just get for an easy life. Just
maybe Willie Collum wanting to go up the road as well.
Exactly. So no, I don't. I'm astonished it wasn't given. Quite frankly, even despite the fact you could debate left and right as to whether it was a penalty or not, or whether it was too soft a contact and all that. But I'm amazed they didn't give it.
See, when you say you're amazed they didn't give it, you think it's a foul, don't you?
Yeah, but I can see various debates back and forth. Yeah,
but as part of the amazement because of the penalties being given against Celtic and because of the standard of ref. So while we're looking at Willie Collum and saying, right, you let us get away with that one, but the reason we got away with it is because they've made so many mistakes and we've seen so many penalties against Celtic. You're like, I can't understand that. Yeah. And now it's got to the point where you're like, right, I think that's a foul, but I am astonished that it's not given is because of how these referees are.
I'm just going to start looking at the referees in Scotland as people that are afraid to make decisions, game changing decisions. There's a referee in the other semi-final who gave the red card. I can't remember who he was. Stonewaller. Blatant red card for the Aberdeen captain.
Oh yeah,
that captain's an absolute idiot.
I don't know what he's thinking going through the Rangers play like that. So that I don't want to talk anymore about the Rangers game, but that was fair enough. I thought that was fair enough, but he couldn't avoid that one. But no. I think I'm just going to look at referees as guys who are afraid to make decisions now. That's kind of what it looks like.
I think that's what we're seeing with handballs as well. I don't want to drag us back down that tedious road as well, but I think that's what we're seeing with handballs because there is the room, because there's a wiggle room there of how subjective it is. It's the easiest thing in the world to say, no, I don't think it was deliberate, and that's why the rule doesn't.
And it's changed because I think there's been a marked difference in how handballs have been refereed So, and I think everyone knows, like, there was this meeting with the journalists and the referees now that happened during the World Cup, where the referees kind of admitted Bernabei and O'Reilly was wrong. The directive we were sending to the referees to be super strict on handballs or whatever the decision was, those are wrong. Clean slate. We're starting again after the World Cup, and I think now what you say is it's just like, look, let's get home and home. Let's take our 800 quid and get back up the road, back home. Now,
we'll do another one then, because these things even themselves out over the course of the season. So we've got another one not to get given against us, don't we?
Ange said they don't, but maybe that is an effort to even things up. Right, look, in the subject of integrity, I think there's something important we need to do. We've had, in the last 4 podcasts, we have sort of side-eyed Joe Hart and said, look, he's starting to look a bit shaky. In that game, excellent melee.
Oh, great. He had a good save early doors. And look, that was a game where you could see a keeper's mistake easily happening because the conditions, the pitch, we keep talking about it, was horrible. Joe Hart made good saves. No outstanding saves you wouldn't have expected them to make, but saves that if some of those shots had went in and on that pitch, you would have thought maybe you can put it down to the pitch. But he was great. He was just solid throughout, caught everything, and I did want to highlight him because we have highlighted some things in recently. Maybe he's getting past it. Oh, that game he gets praise, deservedly so, because he made some important saves. Even the header, which was a free header in the first half, wasn't the best of headers, but it was really, really awkward and bounced up, and he didn't take any chances with it. He made a save that didn't look great aesthetically, but he made the save, and that's all that matters. So clean sheet for Joe, totally deserves it and deserves the praise.
I thought the first save he made was brilliant. I thought that was really excellent. If that's the one that Starfield gave away and they had a wee breakaway, because it looked like he'd done that goalkeeping thing where he'd shifted his weight already onto his left foot and then had to dive.
The one that was low down on
it was low down. It was going across him. It looked as if it was curving towards the post, not towards the post, but inside the bottom corner. And he did get down to it and put it out for a corner. So yeah, I thought that was a great save and a huge moment because that was very early on and Kilmarnock had started quite well. And it just, don't get me wrong, like this Celtic team goes, even when they go a goal down, which is fairly infrequently domestically, barely any this season to be honest, but it never feels like, especially if it's early, it never feels like Celtic are out of the game. But with what all we've said today about how it was a bit of a stuffy game and the conditions were terrible, you never know how these things can go. You don't want to be 1-0 down after, what was that, 5-6 minutes or something, maybe even less than that. So yeah, it was a big moment for Joe Hart, and we have put him under a little bit of scrutiny recently. Not that we've ever been anything other than massive fans of him. No. So it's only right that we acknowledge how important he was in this game. Because
integrity is, and that's what I'm after. Support us on Patreon. Do the right thing. Patreon.com/20Minute Tim's. Extra podcasts, extra videos, extra writing. And if you don't want to support us on Patreon, you can support us in loads of different ways that don't cost any money. You can retweet us, you can tell a friend, you can leave a comment, you can subscribe on YouTube. What else can they do, Stephen? Tell a family member, and that basically covers it. Follow it. But most of all, listen. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next week.